In a San Francisco coffee shop, a brilliant biotech entrepreneur was about to make the most calculated decision of her life. What started as a simple morning routine took a shocking turn when she realized she had lived this exact moment before. Leila Sarin wasn't your typical Silicon Valley founder. For years, she had spent her life perfecting regenerative agriculture algorithms, known for her quiet brilliance and unwavering dedication to innovation. When she discovered her brother, Julian was planning to steal her life's work again. She had no idea she was walking into the perfect opportunity for revenge. Leila made a choice that would lead to the most elaborate corporate takedown in tech history. What began as devastating betrayal would become masterful retribution. The startup ecosystem would never be the same after Julian Sarin learned that. Some siblings don't just forgive and forget, they acquire and terminate. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. If this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning light cuts through my Venetian blinds at exactly the same angle as before, casting those familiar prison bar shadows across my hardwood floor. The digital clock on my nightstand reads 6:23 a.m. And my heart stops, because I know this moment, I've lived this exact second, the way the light hits the dust motes floating in the air, the faint sound of Mrs. Chen's ancient Honda Civic coughing to life 3 floors below, the bitter taste of last night's wine still coating my tongue. It's April 15th, 2025. The day everything went wrong the first time. My hands are shaking as I reach for my phone, the same iPhone 14. With the cracked screen protector that I never bothered to replace, the same 17 unread messages from Julian, asking about my progress on the biotech platform, the same passive, aggressive undertone wrapped in brotherly concern. Maya. Just checking in, how's the regenerative agriculture project coming? Long investors are getting antsy. You know how it is, but this time, I know what those messages really mean. This time I know that Julian has already been inside my apartment 3 days ago. When I was at Mom's birthday dinner, he used the spare key. Dad gave him the one I forgot to take back. He copied my hard drive, photographed my notebooks, downloaded my entire GitHub repository while I was singing happy birthday and pretending our family wasn't. Built on quicksand, the metallic taste is back, that familiar copper coating that floods my mouth whenever Julian's name appears on my screen, but now it's different. It's not just betrayal, it's recognition, the taste of having already died once. Already lost everything, already watched him steal my life's work and parade it around like a trophy. He earned, I remember the exact sequence of events that will unfold. If I follow the same path I did before, in 6 hours, Julian will text me asking to collaborate on his new venture in 3 days. He'll pitch my biotech platform to Valerie Romero's venture capital firm using my slides, my research, my soul, and calling it Prometheus, like he's bringing fire to humanity in 2 weeks. The tech blogs will hail him as the next visionary founder, while I'll be relegated to a footnote. Bitter sister couldn't handle her brother's success, but sitting here in my apartment that smells like yesterday's coffee in existential dread. I make the first real choice of my second life. I'm not going to stop him. My fingers hover over my laptop keyboard, the same MacBook Pro with the dent on the left corner from when I threw it against the wall after reading TechCrunch's glowing profile of Julian, the boy genius who revolutionized sustainable food systems, the golden child, who was actually changing the world while his sister faded into obscurity this time. Going to let him steal it all again, the thought should terrify me, should send me spiraling into the same panic that consumed me the first time, but instead there's something else building in my chest, something cold and patient and perfectly calculated. Julian thinks he knows the game, thinks he's already won because he's always won. Our parents have been financing his failures since high school, bailing him out of every half-baked startup, every abandoned side project, every time his charisma couldn't cover for his complete lack of substance, but charisma has always been enough for Julian. Enough to open doors, enough to make people believe, enough to make them forget to ask the hard questions. He doesn't know about the patents I filed under my shell company 2 years ago when I first started developing the regenerative agriculture algorithms. He doesn't know about the additional research I've been conducting, the improvements I've made since he stole the original version. He thinks he has the whole picture, but he only has the rough draft. I open my laptop and begin typing, not an email to investors, not a frantic call to lawyers, not the scorched earth approach. I took the first time that left both of us in ruins. Instead, I'm writing. New code building on the foundation he thinks he owns, creating something that will make his stolen version look like a child's finger painting. Next to the Mona Lisa Nova Bloom, that's what I'll call it this time, not the generic agritech solutions. Name I used before, but something that sounds like growth, like rebirth, like the second chance I've been given. My phone buzzes. Another text from Julian, this one more urgent. Maya, need to talk family stuff. Important, can you meet me at Cafe Reveille? This afternoon, the same cafe where he offered to help me with my pitch, the same conversation where he planted the seeds of doubt, made me question. My own vision convinced me I needed his business expertise to succeed, the same manipulation that made me grateful when he offered to collaborate, grateful enough to give him access to everything this time. I text back immediately, of course. Julian, looking forward to hearing what's on your mind, adding a heart emoji because Julian has always been a sucker for the idea that blood is thicker than water, even when he's been slowly bleeding me dry. But the real work begins now while he's still playing his old game. I need to build something he can't steal, can't replicate, can't even understand. The beauty of letting someone think they've won while you're 3 moves ahead. Planning their checkmate, I pull up my secure development environment. The one Julian doesn't know exists, the one I've been building in my spare time while he was busy. Networking at industry parties and schmoozing investors, he thinks coding is beneath him, thinks the real value is in vision and execution and fundraising, but Julian has never understood that. Without the foundation, without the core innovation, without the thing that actually works, everything else is just expensive theater. The morning light shifts as I work, and for the first time in months, the shadows on my floor don't look like prison bars. They look like the fingers of someone reaching toward something beautiful, something worth building, something worth protecting. Julian can have his moment in the sun, can bask in the temporary glory of presenting my old ideas to investors, who will eventually figure out he can't answer their technical questions. But while he's busy performing, I'll be here in the shadows, building something that will make his theft look like exactly what it is, a pale imitation of the real thing. The Cafe Reveille is exactly as I remember it, exposed brick walls. The smell of overpriced single-origin coffee and the low hum of startup founders pitching each other over oat milk lattes. Julian is already here, sitting at our usual table by the window, his MacBook strategically positioned so the Apple logo catches the light, because even his laptop placement is a calculated move designed to signal success. He waves me over with that same practiced smile, the one that made him student body president at Stanford. It's the one that gets him invited to Davos, even though he's never actually built anything, the one that convinced our parents he was destined for greatness, while I was just the antisocial daughter who preferred code to conversation. Maya, hey, you look great. Julian stands to hug me, the same performative embrace he gives everyone, the kind that's designed to be seen rather than felt. His cologne is different this time, something expensive and aggressive. Tom Ford may be trying to match the persona he's been crafting for himself. I slide into the chair across from him and place my laptop bag deliberately carelessly next to my feet, the zipper slightly open. Just enough that a keen observer might catch a glimpse of the documents inside. The same documents Julian will find irresistible, the same bait that worked so perfectly the first time. So what's the family emergency, I ask, stirring my cortado clockwise exactly 4 times. A nervous habit I've never been able to break. Julian leans forward, his expression shifting to what I've learned to recognize as his serious entrepreneur face, the one he practices and mirrors Maya. I've been thinking a lot about legacy, about what we're building, about what matters, and he pauses for effect, the way he always does when he's about to ask for something. The thing is, I've been talking to some investors about opportunities in the biotech, space sustainable agriculture specifically, and your work keeps coming up. People are really excited about regenerative farming tech, about the kind of impact we could have. There it is, the royal we, the way he inserts himself into my accomplishments as naturally as breathing, the way he transforms my singular vision into our collaborative effort, without asking, without acknowledging, without even seeming to notice he's doing it. That's interesting, I say, keeping my voice neutral. Which investors? Valerie Romero's firm Kestrel Capital. Her reputation. She's looking for the next big thing in sustainable tech. And Maya, this could be huge for us, for the family legacy, for everything Dad always talked about when we were kids about changing the world. Julian's eyes are bright with the kind of excitement that comes from seeing an opportunity to profit from someone else's work, and I feel that familiar twist in my stomach, the same nausea that comes from watching someone steal your dreams and convince themselves they're doing you a favor. The laptop bag slips slightly, and a corner of my research folder becomes visible. Julian's eyes flick downward, and I see the exact moment he spots it, the subtle shift in his expression. The way his pupils dilate slightly like a predator, catching the scent of wounded prey. What's in the folder? He asks casually to casually, oh, just some technical specs for the platform, nothing too exciting. I wave my hand dismissively, and then, as if catching myself being careless, I quickly adjust the bag, but not before. Julian gets a better look at the header visible on the top document: regenerative agriculture platform. Molecular soil analysis framework confidential. His breathing changes, becomes shallower. More focused, he's trying to read the document upside down while pretending to listen to my response. About the coffee being particularly good today, Maya. Julian says, and his voice has taken on that tone, the one that means he's about to ask for something big. Something that will cost me everything. Would you be open to showing me some of your work, not to copy it obviously, but to understand the scope, to see how we might position it for Valerie's team? And there it is, the ask, wrapped in collaboration, dressed up as partnership, but underneath. The same request that led to my destruction the first time, the request that gave him access to everything I'd built so he could strip it for parts and use the pieces to build his own monument. Of course, I say, because this time I know exactly what I'm doing. This time I'm the one setting the trap. Julian, I'd love your input. You've always been better at the business side than me. His smile widens, the genuine one, the one that only appears when he thinks he's won something valuable. His hand moves, almost unconsciously, toward my laptop bag, and I let him see me notice. I let him see me hesitate. Just long enough to make the documents seem even more precious. Actually, I say, as if the idea just occurred to me, why don't you come by my apartment tomorrow evening? I can walk you through the platform properly, show you the interface, the data, models, everything. Julian nods eagerly, already planning, already scheming, already imagining how my work will look with his name on it. Perfect. Maya, this is exactly the kind of collaboration Dad always hoped we'd have. He reaches across the table and squeezes my hand, the same gesture he used to comfort me after childhood nightmares. The same gesture he used when he promised to help me with my college applications. The same gesture that once meant safety and now feels like a signature on my own execution warrant. But this time, I squeeze back. This time I smile with genuine warmth, because Julian doesn't understand that he's not the only one who's learned to perform. He doesn't know that while he's been perfecting his charm offensive, I've been perfecting something else entirely, the art of letting someone hang themselves with rope they think you've given them freely. I watch him walk away after we finish our coffee. Watch him pull out his phone immediately, probably texting Kai Sharma, the corporate intelligence consultant, he thinks. I don't know about the one who specializes in extracting information from trusting targets. The one who will help him plan the most efficient way to steal everything I'm about to show him. But what Julian doesn't know, what he's never bothered to learn, is that I've been expecting Kai's call. I've been preparing for this exact sequence of events for months. My phone buzzes a text from an unknown number. Miss Sarin, this is Kai Sharma. I consult on competitive intelligence for various clients in the Bay Area. Would you be available for a brief conversation about the biotech sector? I smile and type back. Immediately, Mr. Sharma. I'd be delighted to chat when works for you, because this time I'm not just the target, I'm the hunter. And Julian just walked directly into my crosshairs. Sophie Lynn's apartment smells like jasmine tea and the faint ozone scent of overworked electronics. Her 3-monitor setup casts a blue glow across her living room, where empty energy drink cans form small aluminum monuments to late-night coding sessions. She opens the door wearing her Stanford hoodie, the same one she's worn to every major milestone in our friendship, the one she wore when she quit Google X to join my first failed startup, the one she wore when we celebrated our first client, The one she wore when everything fell apart. Maya, she says, but her voice carries a note I haven't heard before. Suspicion mixed with something else, concern maybe, or recognition that something fundamental has shifted in my orbit. We need to talk, I say, stepping into her apartment without waiting for an invitation, because Sophie and I have never stood on ceremony, never bothered with the performative politeness that defines most relationships in Silicon Valley. She closes the door behind me and leans against it, studying my face with the same intensity she brings to debugging code, the same methodical approach that made her the youngest senior engineer in Google's history before she walked away to build something meaningful with me. You look different, she says, not better or worse, just different, like you've been carrying something heavy and just figured out how to distribute the weight. I sink into her couch, the same thrift store monstrosity we bought together when we first started working out of her garage back when we thought changing the world would be easier. Then it turned out to be the cushions still have the coffee stains from our all-night brainstorming sessions, still smell faintly of the pizza. Oh. We lived on for 3 months while building our first prototype, Sophie. I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I've lost my mind, but I need you to listen to the whole thing before you say anything. She settles into her chair, the ergonomic desk chair she stole from Google, when she quit rolling it closer until our knees are almost touching the way she used to when we were debugging particularly stubborn problems, when proximity somehow made the solutions clearer. The thing is, I've lived through this before. All of it, Julian, stealing my work, the pitch to Valerie, the public humiliation. The way everything fell apart, exactly the way it's about to fall apart again, unless I do something different this time. Sophie's expression doesn't change. She doesn't laugh or interrupt or give me the look I've seen on other people's faces when I've tried to explain the impossible instead. She does what she's always done. She listens, processes, waits for the data to make sense. I know how it sounds, I continue, but 3 weeks ago, I woke up and it was April 15th again, the same day, the same morning, the same everything, and I knew I had been given a second chance, not to prevent what happened, but to control it, to use Julian's predictability against him, to let him steal from me again. While I build something he can't even comprehend, the silence stretches between us, filled only by the hum of her computers, the gentle whir of cooling fans. That sounds like electronic breathing. Sophie reaches for her tea mug, one of those enormous ceramic things that holds enough caffeine to power a small city, takes a long sip and sets it down with the deliberate care she brings to everything. Okay, she says, finally, assuming for the sake of argument that you're telling the truth, that you've somehow lived through this timeline before. What's different this time? What's your plan? And just like that, Sophie believes me, or at least she's willing to entertain the possibility, because Sophie has never been interested in the impossible or the improbable. She's only interested in what works, what produces results, what solves the problem. In front of us this time, I'm going to let Julian steal everything, I say, leaning forward, feeling the familiar electricity that comes from sharing a secret with the one person who might actually understand. Let him take my original biotech platform. Let him pitch it to Valerie. Let him build his company on my foundation while I build something else, something better, something that will make his theft look like exactly what it is, a pale copy of the real innovation. Sophie nods slowly the way she does when she's debugging complex systems, when she's tracing through. Congratulations on the TechCrunch piece. There's a pause, a moment where I can almost hear him recalibrating his response, because praise from me is the last thing he expected. Thanks, Maya, that means a lot coming from you. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye on business strategy, but I really think Prometheus could be something special. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. It's just long enough for his insecurity to start gnawing at the edges of his confidence. Julian, I say, and I let my voice crack slightly. Let it carry just a hint of defeat. I've been thinking about what you said about collaboration, about family legacy, about building something together. Yes, he says too quickly, too eagerly, the way he always responds when he senses weakness, when he thinks he's found an opening. I think I was wrong to be so protective of my work, so territorial maybe. There's room for both of us in this space. Maybe I could learn something from watching you build. Prometheus, the line goes quiet except for the sound of Julian's breathing, which is shifted to that shallow, rapid pattern he gets when he's excited, when he thinks he's about to close a deal. "Maya, are you saying you want to work together?" he asks. And I can hear him trying to contain his excitement, trying to sound magnanimous instead of victorious. Not exactly, I say, because the performance has to be perfect. Has to sound like genuine defeat. I think I need to step back for a while, take some time to figure out what I really want to build. Maybe focus on smaller projects, less ambitious things. Julian makes a sound that might be sympathy, but sounds more like satisfaction, you know. "Maya, I think that's really mature of you sometimes. The best thing we can do is recognize our limitations, focus on what we're actually good at, and there it is." The condescension wrapped in brotherly concern the way? He's always talked to me like I'm a promising intern who needs guidance to reach my potential, like my ideas are worth considering but need his vision to become reality. "You're right," I say, injecting just enough resignation into my voice to make it believable. "Maybe some people are better at execution and some people are better at innovation." "Exactly," Julian says, and I can practically hear his smile through the phone. "You've always been the brilliant technical mind, Maya. But building a company, scaling a platform, dealing with investors, that's a different skill set entirely." I hang up after we exchange pleasantries after he offers to keep me in the loop about Prometheus's progress after he suggests we grab coffee soon to discuss potential opportunities for collaboration. Then I open my laptop and get back to work. Novobloom has been growing in the shadows while Julian performs for the media. Sophie and I have been building something that makes my original biotech platform look like a proof of concept, like the rough sketch before the masterpiece. We've encrypted everything, implemented security protocols that would make the NSA proud, created a development environment that exists in a digital fortress. Julian could never breach the real beauty of the Trojan horse isn't that it gets you inside the city walls. The real beauty is that your enemies invite you and celebrate your arrival, open the gates wide, and throw a parade while you're preparing to burn everything down. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Kai. Julian hired me to do background research on potential competitors, specifically Novobloom. He wants to know who's behind it, what their capabilities are, how much of a threat they might pose. I smile and type back. Tell him Novobloom is being developed by a stealth startup with significant backing, that they're about 6 months ahead of anything currently in the market, and that they should be very, very worried because Julian is about to learn the difference between stealing someone's work and understanding it, between performing innovation and actually creating it, between building a company on borrowed ideas and building something that will change the world. The fog outside my window is starting to lift, revealing the city in sharp focus, revealing the truth that was always there, hidden beneath the mist. And I know that very soon Julian will discover what I've learned about the nature of power. Real power isn't taking what someone else built. Real power is building something so much better that the theft becomes irrelevant, becomes laughable, becomes the kind of mistake that follows you for the rest of your career. Julian thinks he's won, but Julian has never understood that some games are won not by taking the most pieces, but by controlling the board. And I've been controlling this board since the moment I decided to let him steal from me again. Valerie Romero's conference room occupies the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Soma, and the view from here makes the rest of San Francisco look like an architectural model, like something you could rearrange with careful fingers. If you just knew which buildings to move, the late afternoon sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in the kind of golden light that makes even venture capitalists look almost human. I'm not supposed to be here. Julian doesn't know I'm sitting in the coffee shop across the street watching the live stream that Kestrel Capital broadcasts for their portfolio companies. Watching him pace behind the presentation table in his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, the one he bought specifically for this meeting, the one that costs more than most people's rent. Sophie is beside me, her laptop open to 3 different screens, one showing the live stream, one monitoring Julian's stolen code base in real time, and one tracking the social media mentions of Prometheus, which have been climbing steadily since the tech crunch. Article went viral. He looks confident, I say, watching Julian gesture at the screen where my slides are being projected, my carefully crafted pitch deck that he's memorized. Like scripture without understanding the theology, Sophie snorts. He looks like a peacock who wandered into THOHIK convention Valerie sits at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back in the kind of severe bun that suggests she has no time for nonsense, that she's built her billion-dollar fund by asking the questions that make founders uncomfortable, the questions that separate the visionaries from the performers, the builders from the borrowers. Julian begins with the same opening line I used in my original pitch 18. Months of research have led me to a simple conclusion. The future of agriculture isn't just sustainable. It's regenerative, but where my delivery was passionate, authentic, born from years of studying soil microbiomes and carbon sequestration techniques. Julian feels rehearsed, like he's performing a role he doesn't quite understand, like an actor who's learned his lines phonetically without knowing what language he's speaking. The first 20 minutes go smoothly. Julian has memorized my technical explanations, my market analysis, my competitive landscape overview. He's even managed to replicate my speaking cadence, the way I pause for emphasis, the way I gesture when I'm explaining complex concepts. But then Valerie leans forward and asks, "The first real question, Julian, can you walk us through the molecular basis of your soil optimization algorithm, specifically how you're measuring carbon sequestration at the bacterial level?" There's a pause that lasts maybe 3 seconds but feels like 3 years. Julian's smile falters almost imperceptibly, and I see him do what he always does. When he's caught off guard, he pivots to charm. "That's a great question, Valerie, and it gets to the heart of what makes Prometheus revolutionary. We're using proprietary machine learning models to analyze soil composition in ways that have never been attempted before, which is complete bullshit dressed up in buzzwords." Valerie's expression doesn't change, but something shifts in the room's energy, like the moment before lightning strikes, and all the hair on your arm stands up and you know something electric is about to happen. "That's interesting, Julian. But I asked about the molecular basis. Your slides reference specific bacterial strains. Azotobacter and Rhizobium. How exactly are you measuring their nitrogen fixation rates in relation to carbon storage?" Julian's face goes through a series of micro-expressions: confusion, recognition, panic, before settling on what he hopes looks like confident professionalism. "Well, the specifics are quite technical, but essentially we're leveraging advanced spectroscopy techniques combined with machine learning to create predictive models." Valerie looks at him the way a biologist might look at an interesting specimen, the way a surgeon might examine a tumor she's trying to decide whether to cut out. "Julian," she says, her voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that comes from having dismantled 1,000 pitches from 1,000 overly confident founders, "can you tell me the difference between associative and symbiotic nitrogen fixation?" The silence that follows is so complete, I can hear the coffee machine in the adjacent break room, the gentle hum of the building's air conditioning system, the sound of Julian's credibility evaporating in real time. Well, Julian says, and then stops because there's nowhere to go from there, no charm offensive that can bridge the gap. Act. Between performance and knowledge, no business. Act. School networking trick that can teach you biochemistry in 30 seconds. I feel Sophie's hand on my arm anchoring me to this moment, because watching Julian's facade crumble is both more and less satisfying than I expected. It's not the explosive destruction I fantasized about during those long nights after he destroyed my first company. It's something quieter, more surgical, more complete. The meeting continues for another 20 minutes, but it's really over. Julian tries to recover, tries to pivot back to market opportunity and user acquisition strategies, but Valerie has seen what she needed to see, has confirmed what she probably suspected from the moment he started speaking. When Julian finally leaves the conference room, his confidence visible deflated, like a balloon animal slowly losing its shape, Valerie turns to her associate and says something that the live stream doesn't pick up, but I can read her lips clearly enough. "This is exactly why we need to find Leila Sarin." My phone buzzes. A text from Kai. "Julian wants me to research your current projects, thinks you might be developing competing technology, says Prometheus needs to stay ahead of any potential threats." I type back, "Quickly tell him not to worry, that my current work is focused on much smaller applications, nothing that would compete with Prometheus's revolutionary platform." But what I don't tell Kai, what Julian will never know, is that tomorrow morning Valerie Romero is going to receive a very different kind of pitch deck, one that demonstrates exactly what real innovation looks like when it's built by someone who understands not just the business model, but the science behind it. Bloom's Series A presentation is already in. Valerie's inbox marked urgent, marked confidential, marked with the kind of technical specifications that prove, beyond any doubt, who actually understands regenerative agriculture at the molecular level. Sophie closes her laptop and looks at me with something that might be pride or might be concern. How does it feel, she asks, watching your brother crash and burn in real time? And the honest answer surprises me. It doesn't feel like victory yet. It feels like justice. The slow, inexorable kind of justice that comes not from destroying someone, but from letting the truth reveal itself at its own pace. Julian walked into that room thinking he could perform his way through technical questions, thinking charm could substitute for knowledge, thinking he could build a company on borrowed brilliance. But some things can't be borrowed, can't be performed, can't be faked. And tomorrow, when Valerie calls to discuss Bloom's funding round, Julian will finally understand what it means to compete against someone who doesn't just steal innovation but creates it. The Moscone Center buzzes with the kind of nervous energy that only exists at tech conferences where fortunes are made and destroyed in 30-minute presentation slots, where the difference between viral success and public humiliation can be measured in seconds of dead air or frozen screens. I'm sitting in the back row of the main auditorium wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like some kind of corporate spy, which I suppose is exactly what I am. Sophie, beside me, has her laptop open, monitoring systems that Julian doesn't even know exist, tracking metrics he's never bothered to understand. Prometheus is scheduled to give the keynote demo at 2:15 p.m., and Julian has been hyping this moment for weeks, posting cryptic teasers on LinkedIn promising that today will change everything, that the world is about to see agricultural technology that will revolutionize how we think about sustainable food systems. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife because Julian isn't wrong. This demo will change everything, just not in the way he expects. The stage is set with the kind of minimalist design that's become mandatory for tech presentations. A single stool, a massive screen, and carefully arranged lighting that makes even the most mediocre product launch feel like a religious experience. Julian walks out wearing his lucky presentation shirt, the navy blue button-down he wore when he got into Stanford, when he landed his first consulting job, when he convinced our parents to invest in his previous failed startups. Confidence radiates from his posture, the way he owns the stage, the way he makes eye contact with audience members like he's sharing a personal secret with each of them. This is Julian in his element, Julian performing the role he was born to play, the visionary founder, revealing the future to an audience hungry for the next big thing. Good afternoon, he begins, his voice carrying perfectly through the auditorium's acoustics. System 18 months ago, I had a simple realization: the technology needed to save our planet's agricultural future already exists. We just need the courage to build it. The audience murmurs appreciatively because Julian has always been gifted at reading a room, at understanding exactly what people want to hear, at making them feel like they're part of something larger than themselves, something important, something world changing. Today, he continues, I'm going to show you Prometheus in action, live, real time demonstration of agricultural technology that will transform how we grow food, how we heal soil, how we feed a hungry world. The screen behind him lights up with the Prometheus interface. My interface, the user experience design. I spent months perfecting the clean lines and intuitive navigation that make complex biotech accessible to farmers who've never used anything more sophisticated than a tractor. But there's something different, something wrong. The loading screen takes longer than it should. The familiar startup animation that's supposed to flow smoothly through a series of connected agricultural icons stutters. Dirks freezes for a moment before resuming. Julian doesn't notice he's too focused on his performance too. It's invested in his narrative to pay attention to the technical details that actually matter. Let me show you how Prometheus analyzes soil composition in real time, he says, tapping the demonstration button with the kind of flourish that suggests he's done this 1,000 times. Nothing happens. The screen remains frozen on the loading interface. The spinning progress wheel that's supposed to indicate complex calculations happening in the background just spins endlessly like a digital prayer wheel that's lost its connection to the divine. Julian taps the button again, harder this time, and I can see the first crack in his confidence, the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his smile becomes more forced, more impervative. Technical difficulties, he says, with a laugh that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You know how it is. With live demos, sometimes the technology is so cutting edge it takes a moment to catch up with our vision, he tries. A different approach, switching to what should be a simpler feature, the basic soil pH analysis that forms the foundation of everything. Prometheus claims to do, but instead of the elegant data visualization that's supposed to appear, the screen fills with error messages, cascading lines of code that mean nothing to the audience but everything to the handful of engineers scattered. Throughout the auditorium, null pointer exception at line 847, class not found. Invalid parameter exception, database connection timeout. Julian's face cycles through confusion, panic, and desperate improvisation, like a actor who's forgotten his lines and realizes there's no prompt or no safety net, no way to recover gracefully from this very public, very permanent failure. I pull out my phone and start recording, because this moment needs to be documented, needs to be preserved for posterity. The exact second when Julian's stolen dreams finally collide with technical reality, he tries to explain, tries to pivot back to the vision, the market, the opportunity, the revolutionary potential of regenerative agriculture technology, but the audience has already moved past him. They're not listening to his words anymore. They're watching the screen where my sabotaged code continues to fail spectacularly, where every attempt to demonstrate functionality results in more error messages, more proof that Prometheus is built on borrowed innovation by someone who never understood the foundation. Sophie leans over and whispers, "Did you really hard-code all those failure points into the stolen codebase?" I nod, because the beauty of letting someone steal your work is that you know exactly where all the weak points are. You know which dependencies will fail under pressure, which security protocols can be exploited, which seemingly stable features will collapse. When exposed to real-world conditions, Julian has been running Prometheus on a carefully controlled demo environment using sanitized datasets and predetermined user pathways, but today's presentation requires live data, real analysis, actual functionality, and that's where the gap between stolen code and genuine understanding becomes impossible to hide. The final blow comes when Julian tries to show the machine learning algorithms in action. The proprietary models that supposedly analyze bacterial activity and predict crop yields, but instead of elegant data visualization, the screen fills with a single devastating message: critical error. Core algorithm module not found. Please contact system administrator. The auditorium falls completely silent except for the gentle hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of Julian's credibility dissolving into constituent elements. From the third row, I see Valerie Romero. Stand up, her movement deliberate and predatory, like a shark that's caught the scent of blood in the water. "Julian," she says, her voice carrying clearly through the wireless microphone system, "can you explain why your proprietary algorithm is throwing a module not found error?" Julian opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. For the first time in his life, his charm has deserted him. His performance has failed him. His carefully constructed persona has collapsed, leaving only the hollow core that was always there. The audience begins to murmur, then to shift restlessly, then to pull out their phones to document this spectacular failure, to share it with colleagues who couldn't attend, to add it to the growing collection of startup disasters that serve as cautionary tales in Silicon Valley's collective memory. I stand up quietly, slip out of the auditorium with Sophie following behind us, because we don't need to see the rest. We know how this story ends. We know that within the hour, the video will be uploaded to YouTube, that by tomorrow morning it will have 1 million views, that Julian's reputation will be reduced to a punchline, a meme, a warning about what happens when you try to build a company on stolen dreams outside in. The lobby, Sophie looks at me with something that might be admiration or might be concern. "How do you feel?" she asks. "Watching your brother's complete public humiliation," and the answer surprises me, because it's not satisfaction or vindication or even relief. It's freedom. For the first time since Julian stole my work, since he destroyed my first company, since he convinced the world that he was the visionary and I was just the bitter sister, I feel completely free, because Julian's failure isn't my responsibility, isn't my fault, isn't my problem to solve. He built his company on borrowed innovation, and borrowed innovation always fails, eventually always reveals its true nature. always collapses under the weight of its own deception. My phone buzzes a text from an unknown number. Ms. Sarin, this is Natalie. Julian's assistant. I recorded everything that happened today. Thought you should know I'm planning to resign. Tomorrow. I type back immediately. Natalie, thank you for reaching out. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities at Nova Bloom? Because while Julian's world is collapsing, mine is just beginning. My phone starts ringing at 11:43 p.m. while I'm sitting in my apartment reviewing Nova Bloom's Series A term sheet. The document that will officially make me a funded founder again, but this time with a company that actually works with innovation that belongs to me, with a future that Julian can't steal. The caller ID shows Julian's face, the same contact photo I've had for years, him smiling at Christmas dinner 2 years ago. Back when I still believed blood meant something, back when I thought family was a sanctuary instead of a battlefield. I let it ring 4 times before answering, because timing is everything, because Julian needs to marinate in his desperation. Needs to understand that I'm no longer the sister who jumps when he calls, who drops everything to clean up his messes, who sacrifices her own dreams to support his delusions. Maya. His voice is ragged, raw, like he's been screaming or crying or both. Maya, I need to talk to you. I need your help. There's something almost beautiful about the complete absence of his usual charm, the way his practiced confidence has been stripped away, leaving only the naked vulnerability that he's spent his entire life hiding beneath layers of performance and manipulation. Julian, I say, keeping my voice neutral, careful, what can I do for you? Everything is fucked, Maya. Everything. The demo, the investors, the press. They're calling it one of the biggest tech failures of the year. They're comparing it to Shadows 2 Fire Festival, to every spectacular startup collapse of the last decade. I pour myself a glass of wine, a Pinot Noir from a vineyard in Sonoma that I visited last weekend, while Julian was desperately trying to salvage his crumbling company, while he was discovering that stolen innovation has an expiration date. That borrowed brilliance always reveals its true nature eventually. That's terrible. Julian, I'm so sorry. The sympathy in my voice is perfectly calibrated. Genuine enough to sound real, detached enough to make him understand that his crisis is not my emergency, that his problems are not my responsibility, that the sister who used to drop everything to help him navigate his disasters no longer exists. Maya, I know we've had our differences. I know I haven't always been the best brother, but I need you to understand something. The code, the platform, there are problems with it. Issues I didn't anticipate, of course. There are issues, I think, sipping my wine and watching the city lights twinkle like digital stars, because Julian never bothered to understand the architecture, never took the time to learn the dependencies, never realized that what he stole was just the surface layer of a much deeper system. What kind of issues, I ask? Database connectivity problems, algorithm failures, the machine learning models aren't training properly, and Maya, I don't understand how to fix them. I don't even understand what's broken. The admission hangs in the air between us, heavy with the weight of everything. Julian has never wanted to acknowledge that he's built his career on other people's work, that his success has always been borrowed, that beneath the charm and charisma and networking genius, there's nothing substantial, nothing real, nothing that can survive contact with technical reality. Julian, I say carefully, have you considered bringing in consultants, developers who specialize in biotech platforms? I tried, Maya. But everyone wants to see the source code, wants to understand the fundamental architecture. And when they do, when they see how everything is built, they tell me the same thing, which is they tell me it's impossible. They tell me the system architecture is fundamentally flawed, that whoever built this didn't understand basic principles of database design, that the machine learning implementation is amateurish, that the whole thing looks like it was cobbled together by someone with access to advanced algorithms but didn't understand how they actually work. I close my eyes and savor this moment, the exact second when Julian finally understands what I've known all along, that you can't build a company on stolen dreams, that borrowed innovation always fails, that there's a difference between performing expertise and actually having it. Julian, I say gently, that sounds really difficult. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You always do, know, Maya. You don't understand. This isn't something I can charm my way through. This isn't a networking problem or a fundraising challenge. This is technical. This is real, and I don't know how to fix it. The desperation in his voice is complete now, total, and I recognize it as the same Desperation I felt 18 months ago when my first company collapsed, when Julian's theft destroyed everything I'd built. When I realized that having the best product doesn't matter if you don't have the right connections, the right story, the right performance, but there's something else in Julian's voice, something that makes my chest tighten with an emotion I can't quite identify. Maya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Go ahead. Did you do this? Did you sabotage the code, somehow mess with the algorithms? Leave some kind of time bomb that would make everything fail at the worst possible moment? The question hangs between us, and I realize this is the moment I've been building toward. The moment when Julian finally understands that his sister isn't the naive victim he's always believed her to be, that underestimating me was the biggest mistake of his life. Julian, I say, and my voice is steady, calm, completely controlled. I want you to listen to me very carefully. Okay, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I didn't sabotage your code. I didn't plant any time bombs. I didn't hack into your systems or manipulate your algorithms. The relief in his breathing is audible, but I'm not finished. What I did was build something better while you were busy stealing something in complete silence. Julian, I've been working on a new platform called Novo Bloom for the past 6 months. It does everything Prometheus was supposed to do, but actually works. It has the proper database architecture, the functioning machine learning models, the real innovation that your investors were looking for. What are you saying, Maya? I'm saying that while you were performing the role of visionary founder, I was actually being one. While you were stealing my old work, I was building something that makes your theft irrelevant. While you were convincing the world you were a genius, I was proving that real genius doesn't need to steal. Julian's breathing changes, becomes shallow, rapid, panicked. You can't do this. Maya, you can't compete with me. Not now. Not like this. We're family. Exactly. Julian, we're family. Which is why I'm going to give you some advice. What? Stop trying to fix Prometheus. Stop throwing good money after bad. Stop pretending you understand technology you'll never comprehend. And start thinking about what you're actually good at, which is being the face of something that someone else built. Being the storyteller for innovations. You didn't create being the charming frontman for companies that don't need a technical founder. I hang up before he can respond because the conversation is over, because Julian finally understands what I learned 18 months ago in the wreckage of my first company, that in Silicon Valley you can steal someone's code, but you can't steal their competence. You can copy their slides, but you can't copy their intelligence. You can take their work, but you can't take their ability to create better work. My phone immediately starts ringing again. Julian calling back, probably ready to beg or threaten or make promises he'll never keep. But I don't answer. Instead, I open my laptop and check my email, where Valerie Romero's investment offer sits, waiting for my signature, where Novo Bloom's future is spelled out in term sheets and funding milestones, and the kind of validation that can't be stolen, can't be faked, can't be performed. Julian spent his entire life believing that success was something you could take from someone else. But he never understood that real success is something you build with your own hands. Something that belongs to you so completely that no one can ever take it away. Tomorrow morning, I'll sign Valerie's offer, and Novo Bloom will be officially funded, officially real, officially mine, and Julian will finally understand that some games are won not by taking the most pieces, but by building your own board. The bankruptcy auction notice arrives in my inbox on a gray Tuesday morning while I'm sitting in Novo Bloom's new office space in Soma, watching Sophie interview potential engineers for our expanding team. The subject line reads, Prometheus Technologies, asset sale, sealed bid auction, and seeing Julian's company reduced to a legal document to be liquidated like any other failed startup fills me with something that isn't quite satisfaction, but isn't sadness either. It's resolution. Sophie looks up from her laptop, where she's been reviewing resumes for our new machine learning engineer position, the kind of position Julian could never fill because he never understood the difference between using algorithms and creating them. What's that? Look for, she asks, because after months of working together, she's learned to read the way a debugger reads their logs systematically, precisely, with an understanding that every facial microexpression contains useful data. Julian's company is being auctioned off, I say, forwarding her the legal notice from Morrison and Associates, the boutique firm that specializes in tech startup liquidations. The digital undertakers who catalog and sell the remains of Silicon Valley dreams. Sophie's eyebrows rise. That was fast even for a spectacular failure 18 weeks from demo.
Aster.
2 bankruptcy filing, which has to be some kind of record, especially for a company that raised $42 million in Series A funding. Before anyone bothered to check whether the technology actually worked, the auction details are precise, clinical, sterile intellectual property. Okay? Portfolio including patents, trademarks, and proprietary algorithms. Office equipment and furniture including Herman Miller chairs and standing desks. Client database and user analytics. Existing contracts and partnership agreements, all assets to be sold as individual lots or complete package. I scroll through the asset inventory, recognizing pieces of my own work embedded in Julian's stolen foundation, like archaeological fragments from a civilization that never quite existed. The user interface designs I created, the database schemas I architected, the API documentation, I wrote all of it, cataloged, and priced and prepared for sale to the highest bidder. This is where the story gets interesting, where the careful planning of the past 6 months pays off, where the shell corporation I established through a law firm in Delaware finally serves its purpose. Blackstone Agricultural Innovations doesn't exist as anything more than a legal entity. Corporate ghost with impeccable paperwork and a pristine credit rating, and absolutely no public connection to Leila Sarin or Nova Bloom or the sister who was supposed to fade quietly into irrelevance while Julian conquered the agricultural technology sector. My phone buzzes. A text from Kai Sharma, who's been tracking Prometheus's decline with the kind of professional fascination that comes from watching a masterclass in corporate self-destruction. Maya thought you should know. Julian has been trying to find investors for a restart, convinced someone will want to acquire Prometheus and rebuild it properly. I type back quickly. Thanks for the heads up. Any serious interest? Minimal serious money. Wants nothing to do with him after the demo disaster. Most conversations end when investors ask basic technical questions, which makes sense because venture capitalists aren't stupid. They can smell desperation and incompetence from across the conference table. They know the difference between a temporary setback and fundamental inability to execute. The auction is scheduled for next Friday at 2 p.m., sealed bids to be submitted by noon, with results announced the same day. I spend the rest of the week researching comparable sales, recent IP acquisitions, similar technology transfers, anything that will help me craft a bid that's high enough to win, but not so high as to attract unwanted attention. The beautiful irony is that Julian's theft makes this easier, not harder, because I know exactly what each piece of intellectual property is worth. I know which patents are genuinely valuable and which are worthless. I know which algorithms actually work and which are theoretical constructs that sound impressive in pitch decks but fail under real-world conditions. More importantly, I know that most of the genuinely innovative work, the breakthrough algorithms that make regenerative agriculture scalable, already belong to me, because Julian only stole the surface layer, the user-facing components that look impressive to investors but depend entirely on back-end systems he never understood, never copied, never even knew existed. Sophie helps me prepare the bid documents, her legal mind, dissecting every clause, every contingency, every potential loophole that could complicate the acquisition. Why are we buying his company? She asks on Thursday evening while we're reviewing the final paperwork. Why not just let it die and move on? Because I say, closing my laptop and looking out at the city lights that twinkle like promises in the darkness. Closure isn't just about winning, it's about controlling the narrative. It's about ensuring that Julian's version of events doesn't become the official record. She nods, because Sophie understands that in Silicon Valley, perception often matters more than reality, that letting Julian's failure speak for itself isn't enough, that sometimes you need to write the final chapter yourself. The bid submission is anticlimactic, electronic forms uploaded to a secure server. Acknowledgement emails confirming receipt, legal language that transforms months of planning into a series of binary decisions, yes or no, accept or decline, agree to terms or walk away. I submit the Blackstone Agricultural Innovations bid at 11:47 a.m. 13 minutes before the deadline, high enough to ensure victory, low enough to suggest that Prometheus's intellectual property portfolio isn't worth fighting over. Then Sophie and I go to lunch at that little Thai place in the Mission where we used to eat when Nova Bloom. It's just an idea scribbled on napkins where we planned our technical architecture. While sharing pad thai and talking about changing the world, my phone rings at exactly 2:23 p.m. An unknown number with a 415 area code. Ms. Sarin, this is David Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I'm calling to inform you that Blackstone Agricultural Innovations has been selected as the winning bidder for the Prometheus Technologies asset portfolio. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. When can we schedule the transition meeting? We typically handle these transfers within 72 hours, but given the circumstances, the former founder has requested a face-to-face meeting to discuss the transition. He seems to believe there may be opportunities for collaboration with the acquiring company. I smile because, of course, Julian wants to meet because even in failure, even in bankruptcy, even in the complete collapse of everything he tried to build, Julian still believes he can charm his way into relevance, still thinks his personality can compensate for his incompetence. Tell Mr. Sarin I'd be happy to meet with him Friday morning at 10 a.m., your office's conference room. Certainly, Ms. Sarin. Should I inform him who he'll be meeting with? No, I say, because timing is everything. Because Julian needs to walk into that room believing he's meeting with a potential savior, believing he might still have a chance to recover from this disaster, believing right up until the moment he sees my face that someone else is going to rescue him from the consequences of his own actions. Let it be a surprise. Because the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic or performative. The best revenge is quiet, precise, inevitable, like watching someone dig their own grave and then handing them a headstone with their name already carved. Julian thinks this meeting is about his future, his potential comeback, his chance to rebuild. What he destroyed, he has no idea. It's about mine, the Morrison & Associates. Conference room smells like leather and disappointment, and the kind of expensive cologne that lawyers wear when they're about to deliver bad news to clients who can't afford to hear it. The mahogany table reflects the morning light streaming through windows that look out onto the financial district where fortunes are made and destroyed with equal efficiency. I arrive 15 minutes early wearing my navy blue blazer. The one, Sophie says, makes me look like someone who owns companies instead of just running them. The one that makes me feel like the person I was always supposed to be before. No. Julian convinced me that success was something that happened to other people. Julian is already here, sitting with his back to the door, staring out at the city skyline with the kind of 1,000-yard stare that comes from watching your entire world collapse in real time. His posture suggests defeat, his shoulders slumped, his hands folded in his lap like a child waiting to be called into principal's office. David Morrison, a thin man with silver hair and the kind of precise diction that comes from 40 years of delivering unpleasant truths to powerful people, gestures for me to take the seat at the head of the table, the power position, the place where decisions are made and announced and enforced. Julian, he says, his voice carrying the carefully neutral tone that lawyers use when they're about to detonate someone's life. I'd like you to meet the representative from Blackstone Agricultural Innovations. Julian turns in his chair, and for a moment his face goes completely blank, like a computer screen between programs. Like a television tuned to a dead channel, then recognition floods his features, followed immediately by confusion, then disbelief, then something that might be terror. Maya, what the fuck are you doing here? Language. Julian, I say, settling into my chair and placing my hands flat on the table in a gesture that suggests ownership, control, finality. This is a business meeting. His eyes dart between me and Morrison like he's trying to solve a puzzle whose pieces don't fit, whose solution violates every assumption he's made about how the world works, about who has power and who doesn't, about which sister gets to sit at the head of the table. I don't understand, Julian says, and his voice carries the kind of bewilderment that comes from realizing that the story you've been telling yourself about your life might not be true. Maya, what does Nova Bloom have to do with this? I haven't mentioned Nova Bloom, Julian. This meeting is about Prometheus, about the intellectual property portfolio that Blackstone Agricultural Innovations Just acquired about the transition of assets from a failed company to a successful one. Morrison slides a folder across the table to Julian, his movements precise, economical, like a surgeon making an incision. This contains the complete asset transfer documentation, as well as your severance package and employment termination. Agreement, employment, termination. Julian repeats the words like he's learning a foreign language, like the concepts don't quite translate into his understanding of reality. What employment? I don't work for Blackstone. I work for Prometheus, Julian. I say gently, which is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Blackstone Agricultural Innovations, which means that as this morning you work for me, the silence that follows is so complete I can hear the ventilation system, the distant sound of traffic. 40 floors below, the careful scratching of Morrison's pen as he makes notes on a legal pad that will become part of the permanent record of this moment. Julian opens the folder with shaking hands, scans the documents that spell out in precise legal language everything he's lost, everything he's about to lose, everything he never really owned in the first place. You can't do this, he says, but his voice lacks conviction, lacks the performative outrage that usually accompanies his complaints. This is my company, my vision, my work. Actually, Julian, your work was my work, which makes this less like theft and more like repossession, like taking back something that was mine to begin with. He looks up at me, and for the first time in our lives, I see Julian without his mask, without his charm, without his carefully constructed persona of confident leadership, and what's underneath is smaller than I expected. More fragile, more human. Maya, please, he says, and the word sounds strange in his mouth, like he's not used to asking for things instead of taking them. Please don't do this. We're family, exactly. Julian, we're family, which is why I'm giving you a severance package that's more generous than you deserve. 6 months salary plus health insurance continuation plus a non-compete clause that prevents you from ever again claiming credit for innovations you didn't create. The non-compete clause seems to hit him harder than everything else. The realization that his career in agricultural technology is over, that he'll never again be able to trade on stolen expertise that the industry he thought he could conquer with borrowed brilliance is now permanently closed to him. What am I supposed to do, Maya? How am I supposed to rebuild from this? That's not my problem, Julian, I say, standing up, because this meeting is over, because everything that needed to be said has been said, because some relationships end not with explosions, but with signatures on legal documents. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You always do. He tries one last appeal, the desperate gambit of someone who's run out of options. Maya, wait, I can help you run. Prometheus. I know the business side. I know the investors. I know how to scale a company, Julian, I say, and my voice is gentle, because cruelty isn't the point. Justice is, you don't know the business side. You know how to perform the business side. You know how to charm investors until they ask technical questions. You know how to scale companies until they need actual functionality. Morrison stands as well. His role in this drama: complete his legal obligation, fulfilled another failed startup, processed another set of assets, transferred another entrepreneur's dreams, cataloged and redistributed. According to market forces, the security guard appears in the doorway right on schedule, because some exits need to be supervised, need to be witnessed, need to be documented to ensure they're permanent and irreversible. Julian looks at me one last time, and I see in his eyes the exact moment when he finally understands that this isn't just about Prometheus or stolen code or sibling rivalry. This is about something larger, something that took me 18 months to understand myself. That real power isn't taking what someone else built. Real power is building something so much better that the theft becomes irrelevant, becomes laughable, becomes the kind of mistake that defines not just a company but a life. Julian, Morrison says, his voice carrying the kind of authority that brooks no argument. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. I watch my brother walk out of the conference room, flanked by guards like any other terminated employee, like any other founder, whose vision exceeded his ability to execute, like any other dreamer who confused performance with competence. And I realize that I feel nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, no relief, just the quiet certainty that comes from finishing something that should have been finished a long time ago. Morrison hands me the keys to Prometheus's office space, the physical keys, and the metaphorical ones, the passwords and access codes and legal authorities that make me the owner of everything, Julian. Thought he'd built. Congratulations, Miss Sarin, he says, and his smile suggests genuine admiration. You've handled this with remarkable professionalism. I take the keys and think about the 18 months between Julian's first theft and this moment. The months of rage and planning and patient construction of something better than what was stolen. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, I say, but this isn't about professionalism. It's about completion. Because some stories don't end with forgiveness or reconciliation or the kind of healing that makes families whole again. Some stories end with justice, the quiet, inexorable kind of justice that comes not from destroying someone but from building something they could never destroy. Julian is gone. Prometheus is mine, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I can focus on what really matters, building the future instead of fighting over the past. Part 10. The Bonfire, the Nova Bloom. Warehouse in Oakland stretches across 3 city blocks, cathedral of glass and steel, and possibility where the future of agriculture takes shape in ways that would have seemed like science fiction 18 months ago when I was still fighting Julian for scraps of recognition, still believing that success was something finite, something that could be stolen, rather than something infinite, something that grows when you share it. I'm standing on the mezzanine level watching our team of 47 engineers and agricultural scientists and data analysts work in the kind of focused harmony that only happens when everyone understands. It's not just what they're building, but why they're building it, when the mission isn't just about market share or quarterly earnings, but about fundamentally changing how human beings interact with the planet that sustains them. Sophie walks up beside me, carrying 2 cups of coffee, the good stuff from that roastery in Berkeley, not the swill we used to drink when we were coding in her garage, when Nova Bloom was just a fever dream and a collection of algorithms that existed primarily in our imagination. 6 months, I say, accepting the coffee and inhaling the rich aroma that smells like hope, like possibility, like the kind of morning that promises something beautiful. 6 months since the Prometheus acquisition, and it still feels surreal. Sophie grins, the kind of expression that lights up her entire face, the way she used to smile when we solved particularly elegant coding problems, when the pieces of a complex system suddenly clicked into place, revealing the hidden architecture that makes everything work. Surreal in a good way, she asks, or surreal in a we're about to wake up from this dream way good way, I say. Definitely good way. Look at this place, Sophie. Look at what we built, and it is beautiful, the warehouse. Floor buzzing with activity. Researchers bent over soil samples that arrived this morning from partner farms in Iowa and California, and Vermont, samples that will be analyzed by our proprietary algorithms and transformed into actionable recommendations that help farmers increase yield while rebuilding soil health, while sequestering carbon, while proving that technology and nature aren't adversaries but collaborators. The wall-mounted displays show real-time data from our 3 pilot cities, Sacramento, Portland, and Burlington, where Nova Bloom installations are already demonstrating the kind of results that make venture capitalists call at midnight, with offers to lead our Series B round, where farmers are posting YouTube videos of soil that's been transformed from dusty brown to rich black loam in less than 6 months, and where agricultural extension agents are recommending our platform to growers who've been struggling with depleted earth for generations. Maya, Sophie says, and her voice carries that tone she gets when she's about to deliver news that will fundamentally alter my understanding of reality. The Forbes article went live this morning. She hands me her phone, and I see my face looking back at me from the cover of the digital magazine. My professional headshot, the one we took last month when the photographer wanted to capture what he called the quiet confidence of authentic innovation, the kind of power that doesn't need to perform itself. The soil whisper. How Leila Sarin is revolutionizing agriculture, 1 microbe at a time, reads the headline, and beneath it a subheading that makes my chest tighten with something that might be pride or might be relief. From Silicon Valley outcast to industry pioneer, the remarkable rise of Nova Bloom's visionary founder. I scrolled through the article, reading about myself in the third person, like I'm learning about a stranger who happens to share my name and my history but exists in some parallel universe where things worked out exactly as they were supposed to. Sarin's approach to regenerative agriculture combines cutting-edge machine learning with deep soil science, creating platforms that don't just optimize crop yields but actively restore ecosystem health. Her work represents a fundamental shift from extractive farming practices to regenerative ones that could help address climate change while feeding a growing global population. Nowhere in the article is Julian mentioned. Not once, not even as a footnote or a cautionary tale about the dangers of intellectual property theft, because Julian's story has become irrelevant, has faded into the background noise of Silicon Valley failures, while mine has become something else entirely. Sophie is watching my face as I read, cataloging my reactions, the way she monitors system performance, looking for anomalies, for signs of stress, for indicators that might suggest underlying problems. How does it feel? She asks to be recognized for what you actually built instead of what someone stole from you, and the answer surprises me, because 6 months ago I would have expected this moment to feel like vindication, like the universe finally correcting an injustice, like evidence that truth always rises to the surface. It eventually, but sitting here in our warehouse surrounded by the quiet hum of innovation that belongs entirely to us, that exists because we imagined it and then built it with our own hands. I realize that external validation isn't what matters anymore, it feels like. Tuesday, I say, which makes Sophie laugh because she understands that the best success is the kind that feels inevitable, the kind that doesn't require dramatic gestures or public relations campaigns or careful positioning against competitors. Because it's simply better than anything else that exists. My phone buzzes a notification from our Slack channel where the team celebrates small victories and major breakthroughs with equal enthusiasm, where Arjun, our lead soil scientist, just posted photos from a farm in Merced County where NovaBloom's bacterial optimization protocols have increased organic matter content by 37% in 4 months. Another notification, this one from our head of operations, reporting that we've just signed our largest deployment contract yet, a 1,000-acre organic farm in Pennsylvania. That will serve as our East Coast demonstration site that will prove NovaBloom's scalability beyond anything we've achieved in California. And then a third notification, one that makes me pause because it's not from our team, it's not from an investor or a journalist or a farmer whose life we've helped improve. It's from the mail app, a simple alert that a physical letter has arrived at our corporate address, the kind of old-fashioned communication that feels almost quaint in an industry built on instant messaging and video calls and digital everything. Sophie notices my expression. The way she notices everything, the way her attention to detail, has made her an exceptional CTO and an even more exceptional friend. What is it? She asks. Probably nothing, I say, but something in my voice suggests otherwise, because Sophie immediately pulls up the building's security feed on her phone, scrolling through the morning's deliveries until she finds what we're looking for: a plain white envelope addressed to Leila Sarin, CEO NovaBloom. No return address, no corporate logo, no indication of who might have sent it or why. We walk down to the mailroom together, our footsteps echoing in the corridor that connects the warehouse to our administrative office is the same hallway where we hung the framed patent certificates for NovaBloom's core innovations. The same space where we celebrated our Series A closing by drinking champagne that cost more than my rent used to cost. The envelope sits on the reception desk, looking innocuous, ordinary, except for the handwriting, which I recognize immediately, despite not having seen it in 6 months. Despite hoping I would never see it again, Julian's handwriting has always been distinctive, careful. Loops and precise angles that suggest someone who pays attention to how things look rather than how they work, someone who understands that presentation often matters more than substance in a world that values performance over competence. Sophie sees me hesitate, sees the way my hand hovers over the envelope like it might contain something dangerous, something that could explode on contact. You don't have to open it, she says gently. You don't owe him anything, not even the courtesy of reading whatever he wants to say, but I pick up the envelope anyway because curiosity has always been stronger than caution, because after everything Julian put me through, after all the therapy and reflection and careful reconstruction of my sense of self, I find that I'm not afraid of him anymore, not afraid of his words or his manipulation or his ability out to make me doubt my own reality. I tear open the envelope and unfold a single sheet of paper covered in Julian's careful handwriting, the same script he used to forge our mother's signature on permission slips. The same loops and angles that decorated the thank you notes he wrote to. Maya, the letter begins, and even his written voice carries that familiar tone that suggests he's about to ask for something he doesn't deserve. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to contact you after everything that happened, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did to you, what I took from you, what I destroyed. I scanned the rest of the letter quickly because Julian's apologies have always been performances designed to manipulate, rather. Then he'll design to restore his access to whatever he wants rather than acknowledge the harm he's caused. Writes about therapy, about self-reflection, about finally understanding the difference between inspiration and theft, about how he's starting fresh in a completely different industry, about how he hopes someday we might be able to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of honesty instead of exploitation. The letter ends with a request, predictably, inevitably, because Julian has never been able to apologize without asking for something in return. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee sometime. No agenda. No ask, just siblings trying to figure out how to be family again. I fold the letter carefully and look at Sophie, who's been watching this entire process with the kind of protective intensity that makes me grateful every day. That she chose to build this company with me, that she believed in Nova Bloom.
Hi.
When it was nothing but an idea, that she trusted me enough to quit Google and bet her career on soil bacteria and machine learning algorithms. What does he want, she asks. Forgiveness, I say, which isn't technically wrong, but isn't the whole truth either. Because what Julian really wants is absolution, wants permission. To believe that his theft wasn't really theft, that his manipulation wasn't really manipulation, that the damage caused wasn't really damage. Are you going to give it to him? Sophie asks. I walk over to the industrial shredder that sits in the corner of the mailroom, the same machine we use to destroy confidential documents and failed prototypes and anything else that doesn't serve our mission anymore. I feed Julian's letter into the shredder and watch it transform into narrow strips of white paper, into confetti, into something that no longer has the power to hurt me or help him, into evidence that some chapters end not with reconciliation, but with the simple decision to stop. Reading forgiveness isn't something you give to someone else, I tell Sophie, as the last pieces of Julian's letter disappear into the machine. Forgiveness is something you give to yourself. Permission to stop carrying someone else's mistakes. Permission to stop defining yourself by what was taken from you instead of what you've built. Sophie nods because she understands that Nova Bloom isn't just a company, it's proof that innovation can't be stolen, that real creativity is infinite, that the best revenge against someone who tries to take your dreams is to build bigger dreams than they could ever imagine. We walk back to the warehouse, where our team is changing the world one soil sample at a time, where farmers are learning to work with nature instead of against it, where the future of food security is being written in bacterial colonies and machine learning models, and the kind of collaboration between human intelligence and natural systems that Julian never understood, never appreciated, never recognized as the foundation of everything he tried to steal. My phone buzzes. One more notification, this one from Valerie Romero's office, confirming our Series B term sheet review meeting for next week, where we'll discuss expanding Nova Bloom to 15 additional markets, where we'll plan the next phase of our mission to prove that technology and sustainability aren't opposing forces, but complementary aspects of a single vision. Sophie looks at me and smiles the way she smiled when we first dreamed of building something that mattered, something that would outlast the petty dramas of Silicon Valley, something that would change the world, not by destroying what came before, but by creating what comes next. Ready to get back to work, she asks. Always, I say, because the best part of success isn't the recognition or the funding or the magazine covers, or even the satisfaction of proving your doubters wrong. The best part of success is the work itself, the daily practice of turning ideas into reality, of solving problems that matter, of building something that didn't exist before you imagined it into existence. Julian thought success was something you could take from someone else. But Julian never understood that real success is something you create with Your own hand, something that belongs to you so completely that no one can ever steal it because it exists in the intersection of your unique knowledge and your irreplaceable vision outside. The warehouse windows, the sun is setting over the bay area, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that make everything look possible. Everything look beautiful. Everything look exactly like the future we're building together. I take one last look at the shredded remains of Julian's letters scattered like snow across the mailroom floor and realize that I'm not angry anymore, not hurt anymore. Not defined by what happened to me, but by what I chose to do about it. Because that's what power really looks like. Not the ability to destroy someone who wronged you, but the ability to create something so much better that their wrongs become irrelevant. Julian is somewhere out there, probably in another industry, probably telling another version of our story, probably trying to rebuild his reputation on borrowed credibility and stolen charm. But Julian's story isn't my story anymore. My story is Nova Bloom as Sophia's soil bacteria that sequester carbon as farmers who sleep better knowing their land will be healthier next year than it was this year is technology that serves life instead of consuming it. My story is walking into the future with my hands full of seeds instead of stones, ready to plant instead of destroy, ready to build instead of burn, ready to create the world I want to live in rather than fight over the scraps of the world that already exists and that feels like victory, that feels like peace, that feels like coming home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.